Hello again, this is Don Zico. I've got another battle report, this time against Warriors of Chaos using a list that complies with the ETC comp. And for those that aren't familiar, basically the big restrictions on this is it limits, like if you're going to take a Hydra or a Cauldron, there's a limited number of those that you can take of the Hydra, the Cauldron, and the Pendant of Kalath. There's a limited number of models with repeater crossbows in the army, and a couple things. So basically, the big difference is it's going to limit my magic pretty heavily, and my Pegasus Rider just has the Armor of Eternal Servitude instead of the Pendant of Kalath that he would otherwise have. But anyway, going into deployment, this is my army. I've got my 20 Corsairs with the Sea Serpent Standard on my left flank, then 15 Crossbowmen with Banner and a Musician, my Cauldron of Blood BSB behind them, 5 Harpies to their right, and then behind the Harpies I've got my 20 Black Guard. Behind them I've got a unit of about 25 Warriors, and in that is my level 4 Mage, who is my General. And to their right I have my Hydra, my hero on a Pegasus. Again, he's got a Dragonbane Gem, Armor of Eternal Servitude, and Potion of Foolhardiness. So he's got a 2-up armor, 4-up ward, 2-up against flaming, and he can get a devastating charge and immune psychology once. And then coming over to the right from that, I've got two units of Shades, and I've got a level 2 Mage with Metal Magic. And she's off on her own because I realized that this army I'm facing off against doesn't really have any ranged attack that can kill her. Then the Chaos Army, he's got a Chimera, and that's kitted out with Regeneration, the Breath Weapon and Flying, and a regular Chaos Chariot. I think it's marked Nurgle out on his right flank. And he's got 5 dogs with Vanguard, which is how they moved up like that. He's got a unit of, I think, 17 Nurgle Warriors with his Battle Standard Bearer, who is kitted out in some way, and a level 1 Mage with Shadow that also, I think, has like an Enchanted Shield or some such. Then moving across his line, he's got a unit of 6 Trolls, and next to that is a Corby's Chariot, also marked Nurgle. And over on his left, he's got another unit of dogs, and then he has his Demon Prince and his 4 Skull Crushers. Now, the Demon Prince, because of the ETC rules, is not tooled up the way you would expect. It's Tzeentch instead of Nurgle, and he doesn't have Chaos Armor, so it only has a 3-up armor save, but other than that, it's the basic build. It's got Soul Feeder, it's got a Charmed Shield, and a Dragonbane Gem, and it's a level 4 Mage. And he's using the Lore of Metal because Tzeentch is terrible. So anyway, I win the roll-off to get first turn, and I don't do a whole lot. Basically, I move my army up slightly so that I'm in range for shooting. I move my Hydra and my Pegasus around to hopefully be able to countercharge whenever he moves up his Skull Crushers and Demon Prince. And I move my Harpies over onto the left because I don't really know what to do with them in the middle. Then in my magic phase, I don't do a whole lot, but I'm able to cast the Withering on his Demon Prince, I guess. Although I think I must have forgotten that was there because I don't remember shooting at him any more effectively or anything like that. And then in my shooting phase, I'm going to kill his unit of dogs on the right, and also I'm going to kill one of his trolls. So that brings us to Chaos turn 1, and he moves up, but not nearly as aggressively as I thought he would. So he charges his dogs into my Harpies. I think he must not have realized how good Harpies are because, that's obviously a losing fight. But he also moves up his Chimera and his Chariot. In the center, his Warriors and his Trolls and his Corby's Chariot move up a little bit. But the big action is on my right, where he moves up his Demon Prince and his Skull Crushers very aggressively. And with shooting and magic, I think he cast the Final Transmutation on my Warriors and kills maybe like 4 of them. It doesn't really matter. And his dogs, they get beaten by my Harpies in combat, and they break and they flee. So that's his turn 1. Not too much going on. And here's the board at the start of my turn 2. Now here I guess again my big picture plan is basically I needed to neutralize. I figured between my Hydra and my Pegasus and my Magic and my 2 units of Shades, I needed to neutralize his Skull Crushers and his Demon Prince. And I figured if I did that, then the Blackguard with proper magic support would be able to handle the center. Corsairs with magic support would be able to handle the left. And my turn 2 was the really critical point for making the charges happen to make this work out. So anyway, what I wind up choosing to do, and this was just really boneheaded, and there's not much of an excuse for it, was I charged my Hydra and my Pegasus into his Skull Crushers, thinking that between the two of them, I would, only take a couple wounds, maybe, and then do, maybe like 3 wounds to them, and with the charge and a 1 wound bonus, I'd be able to break them and run them down. And that because the Demon Prince only had 3-up armor, I could cast like the Withering on it, or I could cast whatever the metal magic spell is that reduces your armor save on it, and bring it down with crossbows. And the trouble with this is that, first of all, this means that I couldn't use Searing Doom to kill the Skull Crushers, which I had on that mage and was really effective against them. And second, the Skull Crushers had the Banner of Eternal Flame, so my Hydra is not going to get regeneration against them. They're going to really do a number on it, and so this double charge is not actually going to look that good. Whereas if I had double charged the Demon Prince in retrospect, I think I would have had a pretty good chance of just killing it on the charge, and then I would have been able to deal with the Skull Crushers with magic. But that's not what I did. And anyway, it doesn't work out. I don't have pictures of the rest of what's going on my turn. Basically, I do some shooting, and I put 2 wounds on the Demon Prince with crossbows. But in combat, the Hydra takes 3 wounds, the Pegasus takes 1 wound. I do kill one of the Skull Crushers, but I wind up losing combat by 1, although they both stay. So on his turn 2, he charges my Shades with his Demon Prince. And then on the rest of the table, he moves up pretty aggressively. He moves his Trolls up, and his Gorbis Chariot up. And over on the left flank, he flies his Chimera right up next to my Corsairs. Now, he doesn't really do anything in magic, but he hits my Corsairs with the breath weapon on the Chimera and kills like 9 of them. Then in combat, the Skull Crushers, I do manage to finish off the second Skull Crusher, but I still lose combat by 1, and both the Hydra and the Pegasus break at -1, and they're both run down, so that's just terrible. But then on the other hand, his Demon Prince whiffs a bunch of attacks against my Shades, and he actually, I think, takes another wound. And not only that, he only kills 4 Shades, they run away, and he fails to run them down. So I've got 6 Shades alive, and the Demon Prince is now sitting out in the middle with only 1 wound remaining. So here's the table at the start of my turn 3, and I'm basically thinking at this point what needs to happen is the Warriors need to charge and kill those Trolls, and the Corsairs on the flank need to charge and kill the Chimera so that they can then turn and deal with that Chariot. And then I need to focus a bunch of and then with shooting and magic, I need to kill his Demon Prince and his Skull Crushers. And if I do all that, I'm pretty well situated. So in my movement, I move my Shades up. I charge his Trolls with my Blackguard. I charge his Chimera with my Corsairs. And I think I turn my crossbows, even though I don't have a good picture of it, so that they can shoot at his Chimera. But the magic phase is where this all starts to fall apart. So I turn my Shadow Mage towards his Demon Prince, thinking that what I need to do with magic is to reduce the toughness of the Demon Prince. And so, long story short, I managed to... I roll like a 12 or an 11 or something like that for the ones in magic. So I put... whatever the transmutation of lead or whatever it is that reduces the armor save on his Chimera. So it's got a 5-up armor save, but it still has toughness 5 and 4 regeneration. I don't mind raise with the Corsairs. I don't reduce the toughness on the Chimera. And I throw a bunch of dice at Searing Doom on the Skull Crushers, and I get the big version of it with Irresistible Force, but I only roll 4 hits. So there's still a Skull Crusher alive, and the miscast kills my Metal Mage, so now I don't have Metal Magic to kill any of his heavy stuff. Now, in shooting, I do finish off his Demon Prince with just my Shades and my Crossbowman and the Magic Crossbow on my Big Mage. But in combat, the Chimera just beats the snot out of my Corsairs. They maybe do 1 wound, and they take like 7 or 8 in return. My Blackguard beat his Trolls handily, but they take like 7 casualties. And the Trolls break, and I idiotically decide to pursue. So I overrun them, but now I've exposed my flank to this unit of Warriors, and I've got a Gorbis Chariot right in front of me, so I'm going to get combo charged by both of them, and that's just too much for Blackguard to handle, and it's a problem. So the Warriors player, on his turn 3, he charges me all over the place. He charges his surviving Blood Crusher into my Shades. He charges the flank of my Corsairs with his Chariot. He charges the flank of my Warriors with his my Black Guard with his Chaos Warriors, and he charges a Gorby's Chariot in the front. So I've got all of my remaining combat units are in really unfavorable fights, and that's a problem. And then to make matters worse, in Magic, he is able to cast the Big Miasma on my Black Guard, and he rolls a 3. So they're -3 initiative, -3 weapon skill, meaning they're now weapon skill 2 and initiative 3, fighting Chaos Warriors. So this is just disastrous. And then in close combat, he kills I think all but 4 of my Black Guard. He wipes out my Corsairs. He kills something like all but 3 or 4 of my Shades. Now, the Shades do manage to pass a Leadership 4 check to stay in combat, but they're just going to die slower rather than faster. So on my turn 4, my pictures are really spotty here. Sorry about that. But the only thing I really do is I maneuver my Cauldron and my Bunker to try and avoid the Bunker getting charged by his Chariot or his Chimera. And I charge my Crossbowmen into the flank of his Warriors, thinking that, like, maybe if I Mind Razor them, I'll have a chance. But in my Magic phase, I roll a 2 for the wins in Magic, so I only have 2 dice. And I'm thinking, I can't possibly get Mind Razor on that. So I roll the Withering, and I get Irresistible Force on the Withering, but then I only roll -1 for their Toughness. And I get the Dimensional Cascade, so I lose almost my entire Bunker unit, and narrowly avoid losing my Mage entirely. And the thing about it is I realized after the fact I should have rolled the dice on Mind Razor because the Withering is not enough for me to win that combat. And so if I cast the Withering on 2 dice, it doesn't matter. Like, the only way for me to win the game is if I get Mind Razor here, so I should have thrown Mind Razor. But I didn't. So in my shooting phase, I think I put a wound on his Chariot. It won't matter. My Shades get wiped out by his remaining Crusher, which allows it to reform to face my Bunker. And my Crossbowmen, they fail. They do get Insane Courage, so they don't run away, but they get murdered, and obviously my Black Guard get finished off, so that's not going to work out there. So that brings us to Warriors turn 5, which is just mopping up. He charges my Cauldron with a Chariot and a Chimera. He charges my depleted Bunker with the Skull Crusher. He charges my Shades with a Gorby's Chariot. So everything I have except for those 5 Harpies that are still off in the corner somewhere is engaged by a unit that's going to destroy it in short order. And this is pretty much game over. So he kills like half the Shades. They break, they run, but he doesn't quite catch them. But they're just going to get charged again next turn. He puts a couple wounds on the Cauldron. I think it takes maybe a wound in return, but it holds. But it's it's going to die next turn. He kills a whole bunch of my Warriors. They somehow hold, but again, they're just going to die next turn. And he wipes out my Crossbowmen entirely. So at this point, I conceded. It's just there's no point in rolling it out when everything that I have is clearly going to die, and that's pretty much the game. So this was frustrating. So anyway, that's the game. Basically, I killed his Demon Prince, but I killed his trolls, but not a whole lot else. And he just ran over me with his high armor, lots of attack stuff. And I guess part of this is that especially under ETC comp, Warriors are a very difficult matchup for Dark Elves. With our Magic limited, it's very difficult to deal with all of these guys with high toughness, high armor, the Mark of Nurgle that move fast and throw out a bunch of attacks. That said, I screwed up. Pursuing the trolls was very stupid. My Black Guard could have had a chance against Warriors to the front and a Gorby's Chariot at the front, but instead they were fighting in the flank where they didn't have any hope at all. If I had charged things differently, I could have destroyed his Skull Crushers and his Demon Prince and kept my Hydra and my Pegasus Rider alive to help deal with this other stuff, but I didn't. So even though I was able to bring down the Demon Prince, his Skull Crusher was still able to run through my Shades, soak up a whole bunch of firepower without dying, and eventually get my Bunker at the end of the game. And it was also a huge mistake not to try and Mind Razor the Corsairs or cast the Withering on the Chimera or something when it was fighting the Corsairs, because with magic support, the Corsairs can win that combat. And and then I don't have the left flank collapse, but on their own, Strength 3 just doesn't cut it against the Chimera. So, it is a frustrating loss. It's not a very difficult match. It's a difficult matchup, and I just I made a lot of errors. My opponent, he probably shouldn't have run his Demon Prince up quite so aggressively, but he played a tight enough game to make it work here. Anyway, that's it. Hopefully I'll get some more games in the next couple weeks, and I'll put them up here. Thanks for listening, everybody.